ACEVEDO engwele nopewa ndugu tena ndugu eboa iyo langwe ya temba nene sambwa sanja.
Welcome to the ACEVEDO Video Store. Today we are going to review Cameroon Connection from 1985, co-written and directed by Alphonse Beni, celebrating for its 41st anniversary. 41st, you may ask. Well, I recently saw this film and I realized its anniversary just passed by because it came out in February of 1985, and I realized that not a lot of people talk about this film, here on YouTube, so I want to be one of the few people who really discuss about this film. That's why we're 1 year late, but hey, a 41st anniversary doesn't sound so bad. The story is about Inspector Baiko, who's trying to investigate a girl who was recently found dead at her house, but her death seems quite suspicious, so he goes around interviewing people who may have known her, who have maybe known some leads, including her twin sister, which he doesn't seem very obliged to talk to the inspector. He even goes to France to investigate some clues, including meeting up with a martial arts friend named Bruce, who is played by Bruce Lee. He realizes the clues are being more narrowed down to the person who murdered the girl. The movie was pretty decent. The story had an interesting premise, but it feels very much of a slow burn type of a film because it has a very slow type of pacing. We're quite literally watching Inspector Baiko going to town, house to house, investigating who it is, setting up characters that will appear later in the film, spliced into with a few action scenes here and there, which, funny enough, this is apparently the first action movie to be filmed in Cameroon, Africa. I want a citation on that because I was like, really? Because watching the documentary on this Blu-ray set, Lights, Cameroon in Action, which is a great documentary by the way, highly recommend watching it. They talk about how, although Alphonse Beni wasn't the first person to film movies in Cameroon, he was the first person to film an action movie there, which I was like thinking, surely there's not some obscure film that slipped through the wayside having its own action scenes. I feel pretty mixed about this film because the writing seems very sophisticated, if that's the correct term. It's kind of elegantly written, but it's a little hokey in a way, in some sense, especially when it establishes the themes of the film. For example, establish some themes of feminism, where the twin sister of the person who's been murdered, she's working as a prostitute, but she says like, oh, it's better off than being married and having a lot of kids and all that. That's a pretty interesting theme, but does it really go too much beyond that? Along with a theme of racism, which I was actually kind of surprised that it was put into the film and all that, but it really doesn't do anything with it as well. It's only really relevant for the first scene when Inspector Baiko goes to France, where he's told, oh, here's a gun, you're an African tourist here in a foreign land, you need a gun to protect yourself. And he's in an interracial relationship with some French lady, and they have like some racial counter in the bar, which sets up a fight scene, and Bruce's first appearance in his own fight scene. The fight choreography isn't that great. Bruce Lee was the fight choreographer, but looking into the documentary, most likely because the fight choreography wasn't up to standards was because there weren't any stunt performers in Cameroon, Africa. So what Alphonse Beni, the co-writer and director of the film, and also star, who plays Inspector Baiko, he ended up getting, I think, people who ride motorcycles a lot, I think there's a term for him. He got them to be like stunt performers in the film, hence why you have this like interesting looking car chase with Inspector Baiko going after a guy on a motorbike. Looks like it was filmed without permits at all, so they're just like driving around in real life Cameroon streets. Whenever we're in like a public setting in Cameroon, it definitely looks like they're filming without permits because there's a bunch of people in the background just looking towards the camera going like, oh, there's a movie here, oh, look at that, there's a movie here, oh, it's a movie camera. I wish Bruce Lee appeared more often in the film because he gets second billing, but I think his runtime equates to like probably less than 10 minutes of the movie, maybe a little bit longer, but it's not that long because we're following Inspector Baiko here. I did hear this film is very much of a quote-unquote vanity project, which because you have Alphonse Beni writing, directing it, and also starring in it as like, I'm the inspector right here. I have my notes here. I believe this is the third movie featuring his character, because looking at IMDb, there's two other movies he did where he plays the same character, so this was an iconic character in Cameroon, Africa. In fact, in the documentary, his friend and assistant talks about how the police known him as Inspector Baiko and will let him park in areas that he was not supposed to park at. It's like, don't charge a parking fee. Here's Inspector Baiko. Like, it's kind of funny. It's like when Bruce Lee shows up on screen, suddenly the fight choreography is really great. Then when Benny starts fighting, then it kind of slows down where it does like this. Is like pigeon mimicking the fight moves and all that. His friend in the documentary mentions how he didn't think the fight choreography in a later Alphonse Beni film, Ninja Operation Knight and Warrior, also known as Ninja Silent Assassin, and my favorite title, Black Ninja, where Beni plays a ninja in the film. He talks about how the fight choreography in that film isn't that great. I have to wholeheartedly disagree with him. It is way superior than Cameroon Connection. I mean, it is a bit more different because for most of the fight scenes, Beni is replaced by a stunt performer who was Asian and wearing blackface. Maybe the fight choreography isn't that great for a completely different reason. I keep forgetting the fact that I actually own a copy of Black Ninja here. It also features G.I. Bro and Sobers of Kung Fu, which I heard was a really great exploitation film. That's another thing I keep hearing about Cameroon Connection, that it is technically a exploitation movie, which featuring Bruce Lee in the film, playing a character named Bruce. But it feels very much of a far stretch to call this a exploitation film. It even gets its own featured spot here in the Blu-ray set, while a more appropriate exploitation movies, Black Dragon vs. Yellow Tiger and Big Boss Part 2, are dedicated as bonus discs. But then again, with those films, they were remastered in not the best film elements. But I feel like one of those movies could take the spot of Cameroon Connection as a main film included in the Blu-ray set. Cameroon Connection feels like a pretty good bonus film. Hey, Bruce Lee also did this in Cameroon, Africa and all that. He makes a small appearance. So let me get this straight. It's a story where it has a lot of ideas that really doesn't go into. It doesn't have really great fight choreography either way, and the writing could have been better. Not helped by the French dub of the film, because I believe this was a French co-production. Because Beni had a lot of connections in France. He in fact acted in a lot of movies in France, and the co-writer and the cinematographer of the film, Roger Fellis, helped convince Beni to make movies in Cameroon, Africa. So what's appeal of this film to watch? Well, it comes from a cultural aspect and all that, where it shows Cameroon, Africa, in the 1980s, which is a country where you don't really see martial arts movies coming out of, or at least action movies. And I was never really familiar with the country, or even heard of the place, until I heard about Cameroon Connection. I was like, Cameroon Connection? What's that? It's filmed in Cameroon, Africa. Oh, okay. The two main appealing things I find with the movie is, one, the cinematography, which I really like the guerrilla style type of filmmaking, even if there's people looking directly into the camera. It feels in some segments very improv. Some sequences were handheld, but you also could tell maybe the cinematographer didn't realize that, oh, they're going to move towards the right here, so I gotta track them down around here, track them around over there. Roger Fellis also has an interesting filmography as well. He's a pretty prolific cinematographer, doing over 100 movies, a lot of erotic films, so that's possibly how he met Alphonse Beni. One film did caught my eye because a lot of his filmography is very unrecognizable. It's the 1986's The Panther Squad, starring Sybil Danning as the second unit camera operator. I also really enjoyed the music of the film, which is a little ironic because one of the actresses in this film, which I'm forgetting her name unfortunately, I should have wrote it down in my notes, she's actually a singer, and her album actually makes a small appearance in the film as a prop, but she doesn't get to sing in this movie at all. And the composer of the film is a guy named Daniel White. He seems to be a very prominent collaborator with Jess Franco, a Spanish filmmaker, including making the soundtrack for Jess Franco's re-edit of Orson Welles' Don Quixote back in '92. Probably the only good thing out of that 1992 re-edit of Don Quixote. Other notable movie he did was Santo Faces Death, which stars the famous Mexican wrestler El Santo. Another fun trivia fact I want to mention, Paco Rabanne, a French fashion designer, which I just learned about because of this movie. He makes a small cameo appearance in Cameroon Connection, and he's only there for I don't know, maybe under 2 minutes and all that, and he doesn't really have much dialogue. Apparently he's a pretty notable person, and apparently the reason why he's in the film is because supposedly him and Beni were friends. Rabanne doesn't really have much filmography with him. One notable film he did was the costume designer for Dino De Laurentiis' Barbarella, that starring Jane Fonda. So I looked through his Wikipedia page, and this kind of caught me off guard. Rabanne claimed to have lived several lives, known Jesus in one of them, seen God 3 times, and was 75,000 years old. Seems like a pretty fascinating character. You know, there's a very wide range of people working on this movie or have any association with him. And to be honest, I do like Benny as a actor in the film. He does have a bit of a charm to him that I find appealing. Sure, it's a you probably could have called this a vanity project, but I enjoyed seeing Benny on screen. This film was kind of an interesting oddity to watch, so I'll give it 3 out of 5 stars. Now, I only own this film on the Game of Clones Bluesploitation Volume 1 Blu-ray set. So as I've shown before, this movie has its own dedicated spot on the Blu-ray set, not as like a bonus film, along with Challenge of the Tiger, which I hear is a slightly better movie, which includes Richard Harrison, a famous tennis ball scene with a lot of naked women, and also Dick Randall, who produced the film. Surprisingly or not, this film has really fantastic plethora of bonus features. Firstly, it's a 4K scan of the original negative. This is kind of, I find, a little ironic. This is not really a Bluesploitation movie, but this film is like so well preserved and it's like 4K scan and all that. It looks just really fantastic. Compared to the other Bluesploitation movies, they have to go around looking for like lost film prints. There's an audio commentary by David Blakeseel, a writer and podcaster of Criterion Reflections. I was quite disappointed by the audio commentary because I expected more of a in-depth like commentary about like African cinema, because African cinema is not, I'm not really entirely film with, because that's like some like territory of films I never really got into. So I thought it was going to expand more on that, like where did Benny fit into all this. The commentary very much feels like a very well-informed friend watching the movie with you, trying to explain the plot as you're trying to like watch the film. So it's a fun commentary to listen to, but it's not very well informing of like the cultural aspects of the film. That's why you get Lights, Cameroon, and Action, the life and films of Alphonse Beni, which is a really fantastic film. It's produced and made in France, I believe, from Nanarland, because one of its like website guys from Nanarland appears in it. For context, Nanarland is like a French website that really digs into like these so bad it's good movies. That's why we get a lot of interviews from like Godfrey Ho, Grant Temple, Richard Harrison about their like work behind the IFD Ninja films. So it goes into detail about like Alphonse Beni, a bit about his life, a lot about his filmography, which I wrote about here. So we're going to go a bit of a history lesson here on Alphonse Beni. So he went to France to study acting and began acting in the 1970s in French erotic films, which apparently when he came back to Cameroon, Africa, he didn't tell his like friends about and all that. And when they eventually go to France, they're like, hey, that's Benny on a poster for a peep show. In 1980, Anna Makossa was the first movie to feature his Inspector Biko character, Cameroon Connection being the third film. His last film featuring the character was Terror Force Commando in 1986, written and directed by Richard Harrison. In the documentary, they believe because of this film, Harrison introduced Benny to Godfrey Ho and Joseph Lai to be in the IFD Ninja movies, particularly only one, because apparently Benny was such a fan of these movies that he approached them at the Cannes Film Market saying like, hey, how much would it cost to be the main character to play in one of these movies? Joseph like calculated the budget. He's like, it will cost this much, and you get the distribution rights for Cameroon, Africa. Benny was also making money distributing movies, mainly Cameroon, Africa. It's kind of an interesting process where, because he had connections in France, he knew several small distributors that were able to obtain film prints. And what would occur is that like these film prints that will make it to Africa were basically third or fourth run film prints that were played so many times in theaters that basically Cameroon, Africa was their last destination before they quite literally fell apart. I presume that's how, like, the IFD Ninja movies, they somehow, some of those film prints end up in South Africa. So this resulted in Ninja Operation Knight and Warrior, also known as Black Ninja, which had that title in France and also in Cameroon, Africa, which, funny enough, it apparently would be his most notable film role besides Inspector Biko. When he passed away in 2023 at around the age of 77, newspaper articles will say the headline, Alphonse Beni, the Black Ninja, passed away. And interesting enough, I believe around this time in 1986 and 1987, he apparently tried to approach John Liu to make Cameroon Connection 2. Yes, Cameroon Connection 2, featuring John Liu and Alphonse Beni, the New York Ninja and the Black Ninja in one movie. A match made in heaven. never got made. There's a few photos of John Liu actually in Cameroon, Africa, meeting with Beni about making this film. Apparently never went beyond the concept stage from what I'm grasping at, and this project is kind of like a little bit under mystery of like how far did they went with this idea. One of the documentary people from Nanarland theorizes that this is maybe because Beni was already busy like filming in Hong Kong for Ninja Operation Knight and Warrior, which I kind of find a little bit hard to believe. With those IFD films, they usually were shot under a month, and that's mostly with the footage that they're going to later insert into the movie that they're editing, which in Ninja Operation Nine Warriors case, it's a Taiwanese film called A Girl Rogue. But I wonder how the timeline looks with this, where it's like Beni working on Ninja Operation Nine Warrior, John Liu making New York Ninja, and then like shortly all after Cameroon Connection. In the 1990s, Beni did try to build his own movie theater in Cameroon, Africa, mostly because he didn't like the profit splits between the theaters and his company distributing the movies. So Beni tried to build his own cinema. He apparently hired somebody who didn't really have much of a great experience building buildings. They rented the land, not bought the land. The foundation fell apart before the rest of the theater could be built. So Beni lost some money from there. In the early 2000s, he got back into acting and also writing and directing, this time relying on government grants to finance his films, which at the start of his career, he never wanted to do any films for government grants because he didn't like doing paperwork, waiting several months to get a response back, like, yes, here's the money, go make your movie. He actually relied on sponsors for the film, such as VAT 69, because there would be people in Cameroon Connection drinking VAT 69 beers. They even go to like a beer factory in some point in the film, which doesn't lead to anywhere. It's more like a tour. It's like, here's the beer and all that. Want a beer? Because Bruce's character apparently runs this beer factory as well. So not only he teaches martial arts classes in France, he also runs a beer factory in Cameroon, Africa. Well, what kind of businessman is this? He also partnered up with like a local Toyota dealership because there's a lot of Toyota cars, and it's so obvious because, like, for example, there's one of my favorite shots of the film is this wide shot of like a zoom out where Inspector Baiko is like walking out of his house and Bruce gets into his like Toyota car and trying to get Baiko into the car. Like, you just see the Toyota logo on the car, but then you have shots where Benny's getting into a Toyota car and the camera pans down so you can see the Toyota logo. Apparently, according to his friend in the documentary, doing these films with the government grant monies actually ruined his career because the younger audiences heard from their parents that Beni was a action movie star, not a guy who's directing melodramatic films where he's also starring in them, which were mostly his later films. There is some films where he added some fantasy mysticism elements to it. It shows some clips in the documentary. They look really terrible. Like, the talent really downgraded. Like, with Cameroon Connection, not a great film, but there is some talent behind the camera and the lighting, to make the movie look, professional and all that. This is like an immediate downgrade. Well, maybe for his first movie, where it looks like it was shot with a mini DV camera, it looks pretty well in terms of the lighting and the cinematography. He's like, okay, it looks a little confident. But in his later films, where it looks like he probably got his cousin to like hold a camera like this and all that, they don't look that great. Benny's last film he directed and wrote was back in 2017. I look at his IMDb. He did one more film role for a TV series in 2023, which probably happened before then because he later passed away early in that year. So yeah, that's the very fascinating career of Alphonse Beni. And I like the fact that his films now today are getting like a more wider exposure and all, being featured in this Bruceploitation Blu-ray set, along with his films now getting more widely distributed. Cameroon Connection, it seems to have gotten a limited release in France and also in Greece. When looking up clips of this online, you see some of these clips are taken from like what appears to be a Greek subtitle VHS tape. Partly, of course, they played in Cameroon, Africa as well. Now it's awesome that it's like, it's now getting internationally known. Even though Black Ninja is only available on VHS in this version and also in Silent Assassin along with this DVD release, there is an HD master that doesn't look that great. It actually is available in France to be purchased along with a double feature bill with Cameroon Connection, which I heard it's region free. Overall, it was a pretty decent film. I wouldn't highly recommend to watch this. It's kind of more like a fascinating curiosity if you want to actually see what was supposedly the first action movie to be filmed in Cameroon, Africa. And if you're a completist trying to watch all the Alphonse Beni movies and all the Bruce Lee movies and all that, then you could like give it a watch and all that. But it's not the most exciting film to like see. But if you want to own this physically, I highly recommend the Game of Clones Bruceploitation Collection Volume 1 Blu-ray set, because not only you get Cameroon Connection, you also get another bunch of fun, more worthy Bruceploitation movies, I would say. There's also the Nanarland Blu-ray release where you could get that film along with Ninja Operation Knight and Warrior. And if you don't want to own it physically, at least you could currently, as we speak, watch it on Tubi, which is pretty cool. So that's all the review. Have a nice day, and later on, come back to our video store.